In today's show, we're talking Toronto Raptors with the host of the Locked On Raptors podcast, Sean Woodley. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and we're available on all platforms. We're going to talk Toronto Raptors. Sean's waiting in the green room ready to come in. I'm going to bring him in right now. Sean, welcome back to the show. Are you there?
Oh, is it start? Oh, sorry.
We're here.
It was starting.
We're good. We're ready to go. Oh, technical difficulties. Here we go. Sean.
I'm here. Yes. I thank you. Thank you for having me, man. It's lovely to be back on the show.
And as people will be well aware that the Raptors are the team that I hate the most out of every team in the NBA, and everything I say is deliberately biased and negative against them. So everything I say here is just fueled by pure hatred of not only Toronto and the Raptors, but the country of Canada in general. I just hate all of them, and I'm looking forward to telling you how bad everything is, Sean. So we're going to talk Toronto Raptors right now, and I'm sure you're super pumped to hear about how bad everything is with Toronto. Let's talk about what the team looks like, because I'll be honest, this part here doesn't look too great. Let's talk about the comings and goings. Dennis Schroeder joins, Jalen McDaniels arrives. For some reason, Garrett Temple's on the team. Gradey Dick was drafted. They swiped Javon Freeman-Liberty off the Bulls and grabbed Marquise Noel on a two-way. But they lose Fred VanVleet. They lose Will Barton, which is an addition. They lose Delano Banton, and Joe Wieskamp is gone as well. So really the big thing here is Fred VanVleet is gone, and Dennis Schroeder and Gradey Dick attempt to replace him. Jalen McDaniels was a really good signing, but Sean, that's another 6'9" power forward who maybe has iffy shooting at times. Like, in a vacuum, I love the Jalen McDaniels signing, but how does it make sense when there's 6 of those guys on the bench already?
I mean, it's the shooting upside, right? Like, I think if he can tap into like the 38% that he's had in the past, the 40% on very low volume he had with Philly this year, then he becomes a really nice piece who might push one of Precious Achiuwa or Chris Boucher out of a rotation job. I think it's a really nice signing for that reason. He has more shooting upside than most of the pieces they have in their bench. And I frankly think, yes, they have too many of the same type of guy. There's no doubt about that. But they also were super thin last year as a roster. And so I think McDaniels gives them a little bit of sort of injury backfill, if you will. Like if Pascal or OG or Scottie Barnes goes down, like they have more guys there they can kind of swap in. And so I don't hate the signing by any means. They signed him for the biannual exception. And for me, if he shoots even a little bit, he becomes a really nice piece for this team. And I think, again, the shooting has not been there his entire career. It's been up and down, but he certainly brings more shooting upside than most of the players on this team, because a year ago, this team had like exactly 3 knockdown shooters and one of them walked away. So, anytime you can get some sort of shooting infusion, I think it's a good thing. And in the context of this team, I actually am pretty excited about where Jalen McDaniels fits in on the bench.
I'll drop the Raptors hating facade here. He's the best player out of all those forwards on the bench. He's better than Thad Young. He's better than Otto Porter. He's better than Precious Achiuwa. He's better than Chris Boucher. I got no problem with him signing. The problem is if they have to play all of those other guys and how that all works. But he should be getting the bulk of those minutes. He's better than them all. I do think he's got shooting upside. Some of those guys are absolutely on their last legs. In Otto Porter, I'm not even sure that both his legs still work. To be fair, we'll talk about him in a sec. So I think Jalen McDaniels is clearly the best option out of all those guys. And if I was the Raptors, which I'm clearly not, that I would just be playing him and Christian Koloko in my second unit as my 2 main big men coming off the bench. I wouldn't worry about a lot of those other guys. I think they're sort of there. They've had their time. They've had their opportunities, and it doesn't really make sense to be prioritizing them over someone like McDaniels who's been pretty good. But the other thing is, Dennis Schroeder.
I'll push back.
Oh, go ahead.
If you don't mind, I'll push back on Precious for a sec.
Here we go. Let's go.
Real flashes of Precious Achiuwa. I'm not saying it's going to happen. He's all going to put it together, but he is ridiculous on defense. He is, outside of OG Anunoby, the best individual defender on this team. The problem is his offense has not always been there to make it worthwhile to have his incredible defense on the floor. That said, if you go back to the last 50 games of the 2021-22 season, he shot like 38% on 3 attempts a game, 4 attempts a game. That was a flash in the pan that we might never see again. But if we do see something like that, I think Precious Achiuwa becomes a really interesting player. And I think Darko Rajakovic, the new coach, stands a chance of maybe using him in a more effective way. You know, you mentioned Christian Koloko, you mentioned Chris Boucher. Obviously, Jakob Poeltl is going to soak up 30 minutes a night at center. There's not going to be Precious Achiuwa playing center anymore, which is one of the worst things in the world because he doesn't know how to set a screen or do any center-related things. His best sort of role, I've kind of said, if he's going to succeed in the NBA, it is as a big Norman Powell, a dude who stands on the perimeter, catches, drives, dunks on people's heads, and takes catch-and-shoot threes. We'll see if he can actually knock those down. It was awful last season, but there is a stroke there. There is a form there that I think you can kind of work with. And he's a hard worker as well. He's a dude who puts in the time. So I am not ruling out Precious Achiuwa being a very important player for this team. It's a big year for him as well. He's up for a new contract after this season. I could totally see this being a real Precious Achiuwa season where we see more of the player we saw the back part of 21-22 than the rocky up and down road that was last year where he got injured and really kind of had his season derailed when the Raptors also traded for Jakob Poeltl and kind of threw his role out of whack, threw his minutes out of whack. It was a very bizarre season. Nick Nurse did not use him very well, and I think there's a chance he has a bounce back this year.
Yeah, I don't. I think he's bad, and we'll see. We'll see where it goes. Yeah, he did have a nice little stretch, but we want to talk about offensive impact. Like, I'm not going to get too derailed here, but let's hate on Canada some more. Like, it's Dylan Brooks. Like, what are you doing on offense? Like, bro, you can't do these things. Stop trying to do them. And if he can pull himself and pull his head in offense, and this is the problem with him in Memphis as well. He's like, 6'9", 6'10", and goes, I'm actually a shooting guard. Hey, bro, you're not. Like, you can't do any of those things. Fill your role, do it properly. And I haven't really seen any of that. And he just takes so much off the court offensively that the defensive positives, which are there, they don't make up for it in my mind. But we'll see. You're right. Like, he's still relatively young. I just have never seen it with him and still haven't, and I'll see what goes on. I just think there are better options. But I want to talk about Dennis Schroeder coming in to ostensibly replace Fred VanVleet. Schroeder was solid enough last season for the Lakers. He played like 30 minutes a night. He showed really improved defense. The shooting for him, stop me if you heard this before, Sean, the shooting for him is never probably going to come, and this is a team that really struggles with that. So that's why I don't understand paying him the $13 million a year as a point guard again who can't really shoot. And this has been a consistent issue with this team. Who the hell can shoot? At least we've got someone else who can dribble, but he's replacing the other guy who can dribble. So where are the guards? Where are the shooters? Now, Gradey Dick might solve that. That's true. But it's still like I would have loved to get a point guard in here who could shoot a little bit because that's not what Schroeder's game is.
Yeah, look, we're recording this on August 8th. There's a very real chance at some point between now and the season that a trade has gone down that has changed the shape of this team, whether a big one in the form of Pascal Siakam, which I'm less thinking is going to happen, or sort of a roster balancing on. You mentioned the glut of dudes in the front court, Chris Boucher, Precious Achiuwa. Maybe they use Precious Achiuwa and some pick capital or something like that to go try to get themselves a DeLon Wright or someone like that. Just a little extra ball handling. He doesn't really shoot either, but you can do it on low volume. I think there is a chance there will be another guard added to this team. If not, yeah, there's a lot on Dennis Schroeder. And look, I wasn't like a massive fan of the signing. I think he was the best guy you could go and get after losing Fred VanVleet, which I don't think they expected was going to happen. And, you can put a lot on the front office for not seeing the $61 million team that likes to spend money stupidly coming in and offering Fred VanVleet $43 million. Maybe they should have had that on their radar. But we don't need to relitigate that. I think as a pivot, Schroeder, just as a talent play, was the best guy they could have gone and added. I just have a hard time seeing how he's going to succeed with the Raptors' best players. I think if he's going to succeed this year, it's as a second unit operator where they can put a little bit of shooting around him, stagger in an OG or a Gary Trent Jr., have Gradey Dick run around off screens around him, and just give him a little bit of space to work with. If you look at the lineups that Dennis Schroeder has historically been successful in, they have either one or two extra ball handlers. Think of those OKC teams with Chris Paul and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and they have a lot of shooting. Last year, some of the best lineups that he was in on the Lakers featured like D'Angelo Russell and Troy Brown and LeBron James, notably, pretty good ball handler. So I don't think he's going to be in a position to succeed if he is starting on this team, playing alongside the likes of Pascal or Scottie or Jakob Poeltl. But I do think there's an avenue for him to actually give this team a real, actual second unit, which they have not had in a very long time. And that is going to be how he adds value to this team. It's playing second units. It's playing with, a couple of starters staggered in and really kind of making sure that those in-between minutes are run by a capable ball handler, which has just not been the case. There's a reason Fred VanVleet had to play 40 minutes a night when he was on the Raptors. They didn't have any backups to him. They don't really have a replacement for him in the starting lineup now, but Dennis Schroeder, I think, is going to be a pretty capable backup, and I think if used correctly, he can be a nice addition to this team. Darko Rajakovic also speaks glowingly about him from their time in OKC, so take that for what it's worth. Maybe it's not worth anything, but it's something.
Talking about backup ball handlers, big shout out to Malachi Flynn and his dad. We'll see if anything happens with with those guys, but that's going to lead me to
I feel about Malachi Flynn the way you feel about Precious Achiuwa, my friend. Don't worry, I'm the full-on hater when it comes to that dude.
We'll when we get to their starting lineup later on, I've got a few questions. We'll get to that in just a second, but today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Sportsbook football season is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long, because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you get bonus bets every time that they win in the regular season. Whatever team you pick to win the Super Bowl, any regular season victory they rack up, you get bonus bets. Simple as that. Sean, Buffalo Bills, are you a Bills fan? Is that that's the closest team to Toronto?
I think I'm supposed to be a Bills fan, I think so. But I don't really care about the NFL. But sure, let's go Bills. Josh Allen, he's a thing, right?
He's a player, and they're there. They're in the mix, and if you bet on them for the Super Bowl, every win they get, you get a bonus bet. You can use that on money lines, on point spreads, on over-unders, player props, futures, whatever it is. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Don't forget to gamble responsibly. All right, injuries, not much to talk about here. Otto Porter missed all of last season with a foot injury after he signed with Toronto because his wife was from Toronto. We have seen injury after injury after injury for Otto Porter, who amazingly I think is only 29 still. We're not counting on him for anything, are we, Sean?
No, I'm not counting on him for anything, but I do think if he does manage to put together 55 games or whatever it might be, something similar to what he did for the Warriors, which isn't off the table, he'll have fresh legs after playing just 8 games last season. I think if you get the bonus of Otto Porter Jr. coming in as like the 12th guy in your theoretical rotation, actually being a real player,
he's a good player. He's a good player.
Absolutely.
You just can't trust him, right? Like, he's a shooter, he's a defender, his body's broken down, but he's actually really good. And it is a W. If he can play 50 games, like, that's just something that you get out of nothing. And I don't want to trust it, but he's good. And that's interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think, the thing I'm really hopeful for with Otto is that he plays to offer a little bit more space for Scottie Barnes, right? Like, this is the whole thing is Scottie Barnes is not in the best position to succeed, I don't think, right now, if they're going to run him as the point guard. If you can throw lineups with Otto Porter Jr., things get a little bit easier. Everything gets easier if you have Otto Porter Jr. out there. The 8 games he played last year, I was at one of them where him and Thad Young just old-manned their way to a win over the Rockets while the Raptors were very hurt. And it was lovely. It was a delight watching those old dudes be old and successful. But yeah, I'm not counting on it. It's a nice luxury that if it comes along. But I think at this point, considering his injury history, you just kind of have to hope for the best that he can get on the floor, but don't expect anything whatsoever.
That brings us into the starting lineup, and you're going with the full Scottie Barnes at point guard experiment. Barnes, Trent, Anunoby, Siakam, and Poeltl. And there are a couple of things. This is why I worry about where this team goes and how it all pans out this season, Sean, is because, yes, like, getting Gary Trent into the starting lineup and his shooting is really important. I have concerns with Trent with some of the other things that he fails to do. And last season, once they brought Poeltl across, Trent was sort of reduced down to a much smaller role. He's playing 24, 25 minutes a night. Didn't seem to like that. Opted in. Apparently, was going to get an extension. We haven't heard anything about that. But that means that you're putting the ball full-time in Scottie Barnes' hands as a point guard. And I don't really know how that's going to go. And this is where, when we get to the win totals later on, is that in order to get some shooting in, Barnes has got to be a full-time point guard. And I don't think that he can do it. He obviously plateaued last season, and a lot of people jumped off the Scottie Barnes bandwagon. I basically just remained the same because I wasn't as high in year 2, but I also didn't get as low as other people did last season. So I think he's going to be fine. But if you're running him full-time point guard because you sort of need to get Trent in there, I think that this is not, as you said, it's not an optimal situation for him to have success. The half-court offense, I think, could be really, really tough with him out there running, because he hasn't had a lot of success running that in the past. I just think that he can be an interesting ball handler. He can be a good passer, But as his full-time job, I'm pretty worried about it.
Yeah, I am too, man. But hey, he's 21. He's going into his third year. I think, it makes sense to at least see what he can do. This is not a team that's going to go win a championship this season. And so I'd much rather go this route than start Dennis Schroeder and have like a really clunky starting five with one credible 3-point shooter in OG Anunoby. I think it's tough because Scottie Barnes is like a visionary passer. He sees passes that nobody else on the Raptors sees. He is really, really excellent at reading the floor. He's had his most success reading the floor as like a short roll guy so far in his career. And so I wonder, at the point of attack, getting downhill, turning the corner around, try to get downhill into the teeth of the defense. Like, that's not been a thing he's had great success with. He's mostly been the type of dude who, when he has the ball on the perimeter, he's just going to find a matchup he likes and just go bludgeon that dude and find his way into the post and probably score. He's very good at that, but that's not how you make a good half-court offense, as we saw last year, as the Raptors just basically did, trading ISOs between their 3 or 4 best players. I think a lot of this hinges on Pascal Siakam, right? He had a bit of an up and down season 3-point shooting last year, but his corner 3-point shooting was pretty real. I think he shot 40% from the corners. He had like a weird home road split where he shot like 44% from 3 at home or something like that. Don't quote me exactly, but it was a bizarre, like massive split between home and road. And he has in his past some 3-point shooting. Back in 2019-20, he was the main guy for the Raptors alongside Kyle Lowry. He actually had like a pull-up 3 that he was working in. The year before that, the year he won Most Improved, he was an excellent catch-and-shoot corner guy working off of Kawhi Leonard and Kyle Lowry. And my thinking here is, I don't think Pascal Siakam is going to lead the league in minutes per game for the 3rd straight season. I think there's going to be a scaling back of his overall duties. I think, Scottie Barnes having the ball in his hands a little bit more too is going to make things a little easier on Pascal. And I wonder if just the extra legs and the extra energy and the extra time to just focus on hanging out off the ball and doing catch and shoot stuff, I wonder if that helps him get back up to like 36, 37, even 38% as a 3-point shooter. He's added a mid-range game over the last couple of years as well. He has a stroke to speak of. And in theory, he could maybe take a couple steps out and start to have that fall down. He's had some track record of success in the past. And if he does that, then things get a little more interesting, right? If you have Pascal shooting 37 or 38, OG doing his usual 38, 39, Gary at 38, then there's a little bit more space there for Scottie Barnes. Am I convinced of the pick and roll partnership with Jakob Poeltl? Not really. I feel like that's going to be pretty easy to guard. It's going to be easy to switch. Scottie Barnes has not shown much capacity for blowing by guys on the perimeter, and we'll see. He doesn't have much of a pull-up shot either, right? Whether it's from mid-range or 3, that all fell off a little bit last year. There were signs in his rookie year that the pull-up mid-ranger was going to be a thing that would be in his bag. Can he get back to that? That would be massive. And I do think the biggest thing here for Scottie Barnes is conditioning. He talked about this at the end of the year, and this was a notable thing all throughout last season. He would have these 4th quarters where he just decide, you know what? I'm taking this game by the horns, and I'm going to be awesome for the next 12 minutes. And it was exhilarating. It was some of the best things I've ever seen a Raptor do on the floor in the regular season, just hooting and hollering, going crazy. But he did it for 12-minute stretches every couple nights. And he said as much at the end of the season that he just didn't have the legs to go and do that night after night. If Scottie Barnes comes out and is in good condition and can actually kind of go full bore for 30 minutes a night, I think there's a chance he can just kind of will his way to some success, because he is like a very physically imposing and dominant dude when he's in that mode. It's just there have been too many stretches of him kind of floating in a games to really believe that's the thing until you see it. And so I'm with you. I think there's a lot of concerns with how the offense is going to run. They're going to have to be a transition monster of a team if they're going to succeed. And they're going to have some serious uptick in 3-point shooting from Pascal Siakam. They'll have to get creative in the lineups they deploy Scottie Barnes in. I'd love to see him run with 4 shooters at times, right? Like, get him out there in smaller looks where you can roll Siakam at the 5 and you can, throw Gradey Dick or Jalen McDaniels in to offer a little bit more spacing. I think there are avenues to get creative here. I think Darko Rajakovic is going to get creative, but there's only so much scheming can do. Scottie Barnes is going to have to kind of come along in the skill development and the conditioning as well for this to have any chance of success. I'm not holding my breath that this is going to be some miracle. Scottie Barnes wins most improved and is just like this unbelievable giant point guard that everyone's raving about by the end of the season. But that's an outcome that's on the table because he's shown flashes of being that type of dude, just not for long enough so far in his career.
Yeah, all of his usage went up last season, but all of his shooting numbers fell away. And that's going to be the problem, is that he couldn't finish at the rim. He shot 39% on mid-ranges. He shot 29% on threes. Just whenever you just, hey, Scotty, do whatever. Like, get to the rim. We don't care. You're not going to hit him. Like, pull up. We don't care. Space out. We don't care. Like, and that leads to real problems because you can compare it, and I just talked and did the Nets podcast earlier today. You can talk about Ben Simmons being a non-shooter, and that's true. He's a way worse shooter than Scottie Barnes, but he's also a significantly better passer, I think, and there's gravity in that. Barnes is a good passer. He's a really good passer, but when you have deficiencies in so many different offensive and shooting areas, that teams will sort of live with that a little bit because you're not getting completely cooked on the passing end of things, and that's where the issue lies in terms of him full-time at point guard leads to a lot of offensive bogging. We'll see what it goes. Again, I don't think the team's going anywhere this year, so try it out. And if it doesn't work, then you go, well, we need someone else next to him. We need him in a different position. We need him to replace Pascal Siakam as the team's power forward who can pass, and that opens up a whole bunch of different stuff, but you won't know it until you try it. Let's look at the rotation you're suggesting. So Dennis Schroeder, he's going to be in there. McDaniels, Dick, Achua, and Boucher. I don't think there's much argument with that. Gradey, Dick, I didn't love the pick, but I also didn't hate it. I think it was okay to get him at that spot. I think he can be a solid shooter, but there's absolutely, I argue with Raptors fans all the time, Sean, as you're well aware, who they say, well, they got the best shooter in the draft. Like, maybe. Like, I think he can be a good shooter, but he's not far and away the best shooter in this draft class. So aside from his shooting, what else do you think Gradey Dick can offer this team?
The dude just knows where to be, right? Like, he's just got really good instincts. He knows where to stand, and that was like a serious thing that they lacked last year, is just dudes who knew where to stand. It's like the basic test of, does this guy have a basketball IQ? He's an excellent off-ball mover. The Raptors' offense last year was so stagnant as they just waited for ISO opportunities to develop. It was nasty, and I think Gradey Dick is just constantly in the position of, okay, a guy moved over there, I'm going to go fill that spot. A guy moved over there, I'm going to go over there. I'm going to, run baseline here. I'm going to cut now, 45 cut here. He's got a really good sense of all of that stuff. I think he's a good rebounder as well. I think we might see this team be, again, a very aggressive offensive rebounding team. Darko Rajakovic, of course, came from Memphis. That team, along with the Raptors, has been up there among sort of historic offensive rebounding totals over the last couple seasons. And that might be how they have to finish a lot of possessions, because there's going to be a lot of bricks going up. And so I think there's just, because of the shooting, because he's 6'8" and can kind of maybe slide between a couple of positions, because he has that IQ, and because I think there are a lot of guys who can kind of insulate him defensively on this team, I think he's going to get run. I think he has to get run just because there's not enough dudes on this team who can reliably pull up and shoot or move on the run and shoot, right? I just think he's got to be in there. Yeah, there's no doubt. And again, where's this team going? They're going somewhere if Gradey Dick is good. And so let's see right now if he can go and do the thing. I think him and Scottie Barnes are going to make for a really nice pairing. I think we could see a lot of fun sort of elbow actions with Scottie Barnes and Gradey Dick linking up. I think you get Gradey Dick and Gary Trent Jr. on the floor together. Could get dicey defensively, but that's a lot of shooting to have to account for. There are ways to use him, and I think pretty interesting ways. And like I said, I think between Pirtle and Anunoby, Achua, McDaniels, Schroeder's a really good defender. Pascal, when he's sort of not dying because he doesn't have any legs, is a really good defender. I think there's enough defensive infrastructure here to make it so Gradey Dick is not getting just punished every single time he hits the floor. He's going to be someone you can kind of have blend into the background on defense and just give you a little bit of dynamism and a bit of kinetic energy that the offense just did not have last year.
Yeah, we'll see how much Dick punishing goes on throughout the season. Let's go and I got a question for you here, Sean. I'm do a section where I look at focusing on the youth, like players under the age of 23. How many Raptors players are under the age of 23?
Am I guessing?
Yeah, guess. You might know.
Scottie, Gradey Dick, Precious is still 23. Does that count?
No, it doesn't.
The two.
That's
right,
it.
There you go.
For a team that I don't really know where they're going, there's only 2 players under the age of 23. There's a few who are 23, but that's not the point of this exercise. There are only 2 guys, and even the guys they brought in on, and this doesn't really mean anything, but the guys they brought in on camp deals, Exhibit 10s, Kevin Obanor, 24, Mohamedou Gay, 25, and Jeff Doughton's there, who's 26. So there's no young guys on this team. Like, Achua's about to turn 24, and Ron Harper, who's a second-year two-way guy, he's 23, and Koloko's 23, turned 23 a couple of months ago. But only 2 guys under the age of 23 is, I don't know if it's a red flag, but it's also, again, like, where are they going? Like, what's the direction of this team? What are they doing? Are they rebuilding? Are they not? Are they going for it? Like, it seems to be a lot of mixed messaging.
I mean, yes, and I understand that there's this desire for every team to kind of state a direction. I would love for the Raptors to state a direction. I think there's a chance we get that, once the Dame Lillard stuff happens. I feel like there's probably some dominoes to fall. We'll see where things fall from there. But frankly, the youth thing, I don't really care, right? Like, they have good players, and
They do.
I think
They do.
I notoriously on my show hate young players. Like, you hate Canada. I think we put way too much stock in. Oh, that player's young; he must be good someday. Doesn't always happen that way. And as it stands right now, Pascal Siakam is an excellent basketball player. He's 29 years old. I don't think he's going out of style anytime soon. His game is going to age gracefully. I think he's a very good player. If you have him around, you have one of the 20 to 25 best players in basketball on your roster. That's a fine thing as a starting point. And frankly, this all hinges on Scottie Barnes, right? If Scottie Barnes comes out this year and looks amazing, then all of a sudden, who cares that they don't have anyone else young? There's your guy. And that's the thing that everyone's looking for. The Raptors got lucky, right? They had the 1 year where they fell into the lottery and bounced all the way up to get Scottie Barnes. And they don't, I think, feel like they need to go back down into the tank over and over again to play the lottery game. They got their crazy lottery luck and got Scottie Barnes, and they're very high on him. Maybe, higher than most people are, whatever you want to say. They have their internal evaluations and all of that, and we've seen the peaks of Scottie Barnes. They're very exciting. I don't think this team is itching to go and be like a tank team. They might be by accident this year, but that's just not how they operate. They are not a team that's going to go down to the bottom. And frankly, we saw last decade from 2013 through 2020, they didn't have to go to the bottom. They built a team from the middle, and they just did it kind of incrementally, layering things on top of one another, layering successful season upon successful season. And yes, last year was disappointing, 41-41. Not what you want. You lost to a shrieking 9-year-old in the play-in game. That was bad. But the year before, they won 48 games and looked awesome and looked like they were changing basketball by everyone being the same height. I think that was a bad call. I think they have to have more versatility in the skill sets they have on the roster, no doubt. And the roster as it stands right now is clunky and weird. And you've got pending UFAs and all this different stuff to sort out. But the general principle of we're not going in the tank, we're going to see what we can do with this group of players who are unquestionably talented on some level. We're going to see if we can do the thing the Raptors have done for the last decade, which is be more than the sum of the parts, be good and relevant and competent, and then use that competence and goodness to then pivot into being better. That's what I think the vision is here. Maybe it's a little more murky than people would like to see right now, and it's not like ideal necessarily. Like, you'd like to see them have some sort of direction and stated goal, but you have Pascal Siakam and Scottie Barnes. I still think those two guys can coexist with a roster around them that makes more sense. And I'm okay seeing this year what works, what doesn't, throw some stuff at the wall and see if you can find some success. And if not, then maybe a bunch of people are out of jobs and we're starting this whole thing a year from now, back from square one. But I don't disagree with the idea of not going into the tank, because there's no need to go and do that when you already have gotten your lottery luck and Scottie Barnes is on your roster. You want to be the Orlando Magic waiting for 10 years to maybe get lucky, the Sacramento Kings? Like, for every team that gets lucky in the lottery, a whole bunch don't. And I think the Raptors kind of view themselves as a team that doesn't need to really do that unless, a pandemic and a move to Tampa forces their hand.
What do we make of the new coach? Because part of the thing, and this is huge for fantasy impact as well, is Nick Nurse just played his guys at a crazy amount of minutes. He did not trust the bench at all. The bench was weirdly constructed, I thought, which is, again, I don't know how much do I place on Nick Nurse for not playing bad players, or how much to blame do I place on Masai Ujiri for creating a bench that was bad that didn't allow him to play them. But there's got to be more balance. You can't have the top minute players in the league all coming from the one team, or the two teams, the Knicks and the Raptors. So these guys are playing 38, 39 minutes a game, 37 minutes a game. We're expecting a more reasonable, because the Grizzlies, where Darko came from, like, Ja would play 33 and Bane played 32 minutes. They were very well down in terms of minutes. So we're expecting Siakam maybe not to go all the way down, but like a 4 or 5 minute drop is potentially on the cards?
I think so, yeah. I think I'm excited for Darko Rajakovic just because I think he is the type of coach that is suited to the team the Raptors have right now. Nick Nurse, I think, very good coach, very great playoff tactician. really not a good 82 game manager, does not seem to really care about sort of pacing yourself through the grind of 82. This is a thing Darko Rajakovic has talked about a lot. It is sort of, this is a full season. It's not every single game is something to live and die with. Nick Nurse played every game as though, or coached every game as though his life depended on it. And it led to him playing 7 or 8 players on a given night. And that bled into the development of the back end roster guys, right? Like, you can't develop those guys if they're not playing. Yes, maybe they weren't very good. And, I think there's something in the middle there for sure. Like, am I sad that Nick Nurse didn't play Malachi Flynn more? Absolutely not. But he was also pretty prickly, pretty abrasive, pretty kind of mean, calling dudes out in the media for seemingly, innocuous reasons. I think just the whole vibe of the team last year was so toxic and dour, and everyone was just kind of miserable by the end, that I'm not surprised they went out the way they did. And I do think I'm a bbig believer in the sort of power of vibes, for the lack of a better term. Haven't we not come up with a thesaurus term for vibes yet? We got to do that, please. But it's like the power of actually like enjoying going to work every day and having a boss who's like not yelling at you all the time. Like, I think that matters. And so I think the improved sort of spirit of the team, I think the probably a little bit more offensive creativity. This was just not a thing Nick Nurse really tried to dabble in at all, was offensive creativity. It was just, all right, we'll run some ISOs and stuff, and we'll hit the offensive glass and we'll get a bunch of steals. Like, I think we're going to see a quite different looking team in terms of identity. I think their defense is going to be scaled back in aggressiveness by a pretty significant margin. And I actually think their defense stands a chance of being very, very good. I would not be surprised if they're like a top 10 defense. It's going to have to be to counteract their 27th ranked offense or whatever the hell it's going to be. But I think Darko he seems to bring a very fresh and refreshing perspective. And I think everyone's very excited about it. And I am too, because I'm excited to watch, Darko ball. Look, there's a lot of Raptors fans also who are like, Darko's going to fix everything. Who needs pull-up shooting? Darko will fix it. That's not exactly how it works either. Like, a great coach can only do so much with sort of substandard tools, but there is talent on this roster. There are interesting pieces. There's guys who have maybe not tapped into an upper echelon of their potential just yet. And I think Darko Rajakovic, with his track record of development in Memphis, which has been pretty sterling between Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson, John Morant, obviously, a lot of those sort of bench guys that they've turned into real players. Darko Rajakovic has his fingerprints all over a lot of that. I would not be surprised if we kind of see some unexpected jumps for guys just by having the Darko effect take hold. It's also worth noting they really changed the coaching staff as well. Just about everybody except for one, Jim Sand, a developmental guy, is gone. Jamamala Layla is back as a front bench assistant from the Golden State Warriors. There was a lot of thought that when he left the Raptors, a lot of the spirit of the Raptors went with him, because he is just like the most positive and happy dude in the world. And so I do believe that just sort of the tone and tenor around the team this year is going to be different. And as much as I think Nick Nurse is a really good coach, I think by the end of last year, he had really soured. Like, everybody in the organization had soured on him as a dude, and you can't succeed when everyone's just miserable at the guy calling the shots every day.
Well, at least he had his own branded hats to wear, so that's a positive there. We've got three quick questions to get through here, Sean. I want to give you a breakout candidate, a regression candidate, and a trade candidate. So just give me who your breakout candidate is. Give me a name. What do you think?
I mean, the breakout guy is Scottie Barnes. It's chalk, but that's the easy one. He's going to have the opportunity. He's going to have a ton of the ball, and there are going to be nights, even if it's not, pretty all season long, there are going to be nights where he does what he's done in the past against like the Lakers last season, where he goes for like 34 and 7 and 8. And it's like, oh, okay, there's a real thing here. I think just the opportunity means that Scottie Barnes is going to be that breakout guy. As far as a regression candidate, this is a tough one. I think efficiency-wise, if they do the thing where they make OG have more possessions, the efficiency is going to regress for him, as it always has when he's had more of an offensive burden on his plate. He is an excellent play finisher. He is a wonderful catch-and-shoot guy. He's a great cutter and scorer around the basket. He is not someone who's going to create plays for you effectively. He's not going to create plays for others effectively. And so if we see that sort of ramp up for OG, I think we'll see a regression in his overall impact. I just don't want to see it. Like, just let OG be OG. I've been saying this for 2-3 years. Like, there doesn't have to be this Kawhi Leonard-like jump for him that everyone's been dreaming about for him for a few years now. Just be the 18-point-a-game best defender in the world who hits 38% of your threes, and you're just fine. Like, that is an excellent, excellent basketball player who fits on any team, including this one. But I do fear there's going to be a bit of a leveling up for his responsibility, just out of necessity and out of them wanting to give him what he's looking for. And I think that could come with a little bit of pain. And trade candidate, I mean, I guess it's Pascal for now.
Look, it's got to be between two. It's got to be between two guys, surely. It's got to be Pascal or OG, surely, because OG is last year of his contract, or he's got a player option, and Pascal is in last year's contract. So who's like most likely? We keep hearing about Pascal, but who's most likely to go?
I think for me, OG would be the guy. Like, I love OG. I think he's an excellent player, and he's the type of player you trade and regret it for many, many years because you're never finding a dude like that again. But I think the way they're set up, I think Pascal and Scottie, if you're going to pick two of those three guys, that's the talent play. Those are the two best players or potential best players that you have. OG is probably better than Scottie right now, but bear with me. I think that's the talent play, is to build the team around Scottie and Pascal. Pascal, by all accounts, wants to be in Toronto. When a two-time All-NBA player wants to be on your team, I think you should just keep him around. I don't really care about the size of the contracts. Guess what? That's the NBA in 2023-24. We just got to deal with big, sticker shock prices for really good players. I'd rather have the really good player than not have the really good player. With OG, I think he is the key because he can help you reassemble the roster around Scottie and Pascal in a way that makes more sense around them. You'd still probably have to look at moving Jakob Poeltl down the line to really maximize that duo. You can do that if you have Scottie Barnes on his rookie deal still and Pascal locked up for the next 4 or 5 years. There is some runway to do some tinkering, but OG kickstarts that. And I want to run this by. I got a fake trade for you, actually. I've been kicking around on my show all summer. What if the Raptors called up the Knicks right now and said, we'll give you Thad Young for salary and OG Anunoby for Emmanuel Quickley, Quentin Grimes, and Evan Fournier? It matches basically exactly in the trade machine. Do you take that deal if you're the Raptors or the Knicks?
So you talk Nick. So forget about the salary, guys. Let's talk Anunoby for Grimes and Quickley.
Yes.
Okay. So Anunoby would then move into the starting lineup, pushing RJ Barrett down to the 2. It hurts your shooting there because Grimes is a really good shooter. OG's obviously a better player than Barrett. You don't really have anyone else for the Knicks to replace Barrett, though, because your two options there were Grimes and Quickley, and they're both gone, which, well, I suppose you could start Josh Hart, but then you've got more shooting problems there. I really like OG as a player. He's only 26 still. I understand the framework of it, and OG is the best guy out of that group. I'm not sure it solves the Knicks' problems because it actually puts more onto RJ Barrett's plate, and I don't think that's a good thing necessarily. It is interesting. I'm not sure that it's in terms of overall value, and we can talk about this all the time. Like, overall value, it's fine, but does the fit work? Does the fit make sense? Sure. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that does. For the Raptors, I think getting some guys who can dribble and can shoot and can defend is awesome. Like, that's unbelievable to get those guys. I'm not sure that it makes a ton of sense for the Knicks in that situation.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And it probably falls apart on the Knicks side. I think the fit for the Raptors would make a ton of sense. You get like actual ball handling and Quickley, and a guy who I think within the next couple of years, given the proper opportunity, you could reasonably say actually is better than Fred VanVleet by the time Fred VanVleet's next contract is up or whatever. Yeah. And then Quentin Grimes, for me, just feels like he's going to be like a recurring character on excellent teams for the next 12 years, like Danny Green style, KCP style. So if I can get that dude on my team, I'm happy. But yeah, it's probably a little too much for the Knicks, and the fit concerns are there. But that's the type of thing, just as an example of the type of OG trade that I kind of have in my head as, okay, can you get like two pretty good players who are maybe worse than OG in the aggregate, who can come and help just reassemble this roster in a way that makes more sense to help Scottie Barnes and Pascal Siakam kind of take the reins and become the two guys you build this thing around?
No, look, I get it completely. But yeah, it could happen, but I just think the Knicks fit would be a little bit weird with those guys. Now, last year, this team was 41-41. You talked about the play-in loss already. They had the 11th best net rating in the NBA, 1.5. I am less excited about them this season. FanDuel agrees with me in terms of lowering their number down to 36.5. You've dropped it by 1 win. I've dropped it by 9. I just don't see it. I think that there's going to be so much offense. You talked about them having the 27th best offense. It's really hard to be a strong team with an offense that bad. And while the defense might be good, I think you do need an offense. I've dropped them to 32-50. You've gone 40 and 42. So it's only a 1-game drop off there, Sean. It's the local host bump You're giving it to him there. So you're hitting.
I went high
over.
for this too. I've been like kicking like 37, 38 around in my head, and I was like, I'll do 40 for Josh. Let's see how he responds.
I went 32 for. I think the Raptors and the Nets are two teams who are going to drop off a little bit this season as some other teams start to come up. But again, there is a lot of talent on this team. To me, it's just about fit. It's also about what happens with the new coach. That could be a bump, but it also could be, like, who knows? He's a first-time head coach. Maybe he is Nate Bjorkgren. Like, I don't know. Maybe he's John Beeline. I got no idea. Like, neither do you, neither does anybody. We'll see what happens. Like, he also could be Steve Kerr, or it could be Nick Nurse's first year. We don't know. So I'm giving a little bit of a penalty there for a first-time head coach. And now, Sean, it is time for a game. It is time for us to do a Raptors grid. And
let's go.
The teams you have been tasked with are the Suns, the Clippers, the Bucks, the Pelicans, and the Cavs. And you need a Raptors player who has blocked 100 blocks in a season, playing for the Raptors. 100 blocks in a season for the Raptors. Now, we can't do rarity scores. I've explained this to everyone else because it's only you playing it. But you get a better score if you pick a player with fewer games played for either of these teams. So what I did is looked at every player that played for both teams and looked at which team they played the fewest games for, and then ranked all those fewest games. So if there's someone that played one game for the Raptors or one game for the Suns, you're going to get a pretty good score if you pick that player, if they just have randomly appeared in one game. If you pick someone that played the most games out of everybody for their fewest appearance team, then you get 100. You can pick one player, you can only use him once, and if you get it wrong, you get 100 for that score, which is the worst score you can get. Let's go. Where we starting?
Let's go to Bucks. We'll go Grievous Vasquez.
Yeah, I love the Raptors for Grievous Vasquez. Well, let's go and have a look at the list. Raptors and, not bad. A 17 score there for Vasquez. So that's not a bad score. Good little start there for Grievous Vasquez. Part of the... why did that come up and say green? That is definitely not what it should say. I definitely changed that. Sometimes when you're dealing with technology, it can be frustrating. Vasquez was 17.6. Let's try it again. This is what happens. All right. We saved. Are we good? All right. We're good. Vasquez, 17.6. We are in there with that one. All right. Part of the Norman Powell trade, of course. Where are we going next?
Suns. We'll go Marcus Banks.
Holy shit. All right. Marcus Banks.
I don't mess around, man. I'm a 98% hoop grids guy.
It's Marcus Banks is an 18.99. Okay. Why is that doing the wrong thing for me again? Oh, God, technology. Marcus Banks, 18.99. These are pretty good scores. They're pretty good scores. You're starting off well here. All right, Marcus Banks. Where are we heading next?
Okay. I might get this wrong, but I think it's worth it for the lowness of the score. Luke Jackson, Raptors Cavs.
Luke Jackson. All right, let's go to the board over here and have a look. Does that come up as a player? Wow, yes, he played 10 games for Toronto, 46 for Cleveland. That is a very good score there as well. I can't believe that's a real player. Luke Jackson.
That guy played in the playoffs for the Raptors back in 2007.
Really?
Burned into my brain. Oh, yeah.
Wow. Luke Jackson, that's a 4.43. You are tracking very, very well here. Sean, what are we going next?
We'll go 100 blocks season.
Ooh, okay.
And I will say Bismack Biyombo.
So, Bismack Biyombo. Sean, this is shaping up to be a legendary performance because Bismack Biyombo did have 100 blocks in a season, and he is also the player that played the fewest games for the Raptors. So you get a 0. That is an unbelievable score. That's your big 0 there on that one. So he played only 82 games for the Raptors, which it does not feel right, but he played 82 games for the Raptors, the fewest games of anyone who blocked 100 shots in a season. Clippers or Pelicans?
Oh, man. There's a reason I've left these two for last. The Pelicans go back to the Bobcats days, of course.
No, we're not. No. The Pelicans, it only counts them when they were New Orleans. No, doesn't count the Bobcats goes with the Hornets. So this is New Orleans Hornets and New Orleans Pelicans. Nothing in Charlotte.
Oh, that's right. Never mind. Yeah, I'm stupid. I get that confused all the time. So we're going back older Hornets. Huh. Ooh. Oh, Morris Peterson.
Morris Peterson is an answer. That is correct.
It's a good one, but I know it's an answer. I wanted to get one on the board.
You're right. It is not a good one. Morris Peterson is the worst answer you could have given. That gives you
Love it.
a score of 100 for that one because Mo Pete played 165 games for the Pelicans and 542 games for the Raptors. So, yeah.
I thought he had just played like a handful with the Pelicans. I thought he had kind of like an injury-shortened stint. Damn. Can I go back and pick a new one?
No, you're stuck on that one.
Just came to my head, and I'm really mad. I don't.
Who was it? And I'll tell you how bad. I'll tell you how bad you messed up.
It was Julian Wright.
Julian. Oh, that would have been all right. They were giving you a score of 30 on that one, so bad luck.
Damn.
You got 100. All right, let's go to the Clippers then.
All right. Clippers. This is going to be bad podcasting as I think about some guys.
So people can fast forward.
Going back. Trying to think like aughts, but that is a tough.
Yeah, thinking of Clippers players on those teams is tough, man.
Yeah, they're all really bad is the thing.
Yeah.
All right, I know he didn't play that many games because he got hurt. Serge Ibaka.
So that's not too bad. There's an absolute cracker in here that I cannot believe was one of them, but I'll get to that in a second. Serge Ibaka gets you 66.96 for your final score. Did you know Sam Dekker played one game for Toronto?
I did know Sam Dekker played one game for Toronto, and I'm really mad now.
And he played 73 for the Clippers as well, so he would have been the best score there, which is very, very. I didn't realize he played that. And Daniel Oturu, the other one, 3 games for the Raptors. I did
a video about Daniel Oturu's 4-game stint in Toronto 2 days ago, and I'm screaming at myself now for not getting that.
Clippers legend Daniel Oturu. Well, Sean, I think that'll almost put you in the lead out of all of the hosts. I'm just gonna have a quick look. I'll add it up later, but you've got to be pretty close to it. Thank you for coming on and talking about the Raptors with me. What's going on over at Locked On Raptors at the moment?
Yeah, just keep it. Actually, today, Wednesday. I've no idea when this is coming out. Wednesday, the August the 9th, an episode with James Herbert of CBSSports.com. He himself is the Hoop Grids wonder of the internet, and he came on to play a little Raptors-themed Hoop Grids. It's not nearly as technologically sound as yours. There's no rarity scores. It's just picking guys. But you want to hear the name of it? It's a really good pun that I think everyone's gonna like. It's called Gridgen Koloku, like grids and Sudoku mixed into one. It's really good.
Well,
everyone's
fantastic.
saying it's great. So
this is
that on Wednesday.
This is August, the dead zone of the NBA, so you can get away with saying anything, Sean. It's fine. Go check out Locked On Raptors. Go check on Sean and James doing Christian Kolodoku, whatever it is you're doing.
Christian Koloku. Come on now.
Sorry.
It's a sensation. You got to know it.
Gridgen Koloku. I can't even say it anymore. That's fine. Go check out Sean over there. Thank you so much again for coming on, Sean.
Anytime, man.
And that'll do it for me today. Follow this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app and on YouTube. Thumb it up. Leave your comments down below, guys. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.